This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice but get on. Mandate, get it on, and welcome to Reasonable Doubt, best hour or so in the universe. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark. Hard out, soft taco, Garrigus, coming live from the office in downtown Los Angeles. What's going on, Mark?
Hey, I was going to say, I just saw Jay. You had Jay on the big show, yeah?
Yeah, Leno.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he looked fit as a fiddle, right?
He got essentially a peel. They removed, 5 years from his face. I mean, he showed me pictures of himself from the hospital room from his phone that was a bloody, gory mess, hard to look at. And 2 weeks later, you look at the guy, there's literally, you couldn't find a scab like you'd get from a razor nick on the side of your face, and you couldn't see it when you're in the mirror. Like you could not see a nick or a scratch on his face.
Does he attribute that to the Grossman Burn Center or the doctors?
Yeah, he does. And, good genetics and also good living. And it's miraculous. The science is miraculous. I mean, he told me some interesting stuff. Like he said, when his head was on fire, he was thinking about Niki Lauda and not having to get his lungs pumped by inhaling. So he held his breath and he closed his eyes, and one of his colleagues doused him. After that, he said he was sprayed with the fuel, and then a moment later, he was on fire.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I gotta listen to it. I saw the picture and it intrigues me. And it's funny you mentioned Niki Lauda. I hadn't thought of that, but I can imagine that would be the first thing when you're on fire that would go through your mind.
If you're a car guy.
Yeah, if you're a car guy. I don't even want to go there. Anyway, let's go. We'll go back to something that's dropped and that we talked about the last episode, the Twitter files, that have been dropping. And, I thought there's been two batches, and the first batch was Matt Taibbi and the second was Barry Weiss. The Barry Weisses, to me at least, are more fascinating, I think, in a lot of ways. Don't you think?
So far, I do think that, and then now there's suspicion about the Matt Taibbi batch that was dropped because that was being vetted by the attorney for Twitter, who was an ex-FBI guy, who was also the guy who was sort of doing the work of the FBI for Russian collusion and stuff like that. So you kind of wonder if we didn't have a ringer in there for one side doing the vetting. So I don't know how they overlooked it, and I think it was Barry Weiss who brought it to Elon's attention that, the gatekeeper for the vetting of this stuff is a partisan hack who works for the other side, essentially. So we're not sure how much he's letting through his spaghetti colander. But, it would stand to reason that the batch that wasn't vetted by the partisan would have more nuggets in there.
Well, that's an interesting backstory because it sure seemed like there was just, I haven't studied it. I did read kind of the threads. And I will tell you from reading the threads, to my mind, there was a marked difference from batch one to batch two.
Well, the legal question is, what is the recourse for James Woods, who told me I'm lawyering up and going after these guys? You could, your job as a lawyer is to say, well, how much money did you lose? Like, what did this translate into? And if you're a guy like another guy who got shadow banned, like a Dan Bongino or something, conservative show host, you'd go, well, it cut traffic to my site or my whatever, or, YouTube's been doing it. It's not just Twitter. YouTube has been deep into this world, as you and Dr. Drew found out when you were talking about.
Right. And by the way, Gary, do you have the thing that I sent you yesterday? Back in November of 2020, Adam, when I was fighting with the county, we filed a declaration in support when we won at the trial court for the outdoor dining. And look at this, Gary, you got the date on there? I think it's on the top. Maybe. It's November 29th. Look at the declaration. Here's another guy. This was our guy, our expert, and he was shadow banned. Did you see that as well?
No, I did not. I did not see that. I know that my personal numbers of followers went up about 30 grand. Oh, right. You used Jay Bhattacharya, or if I'm saying that right.
Correct. That was who the declaration was by for Mark's case.
Oh, so Jay, who's an expert, he seems like one of the most sober guys you're ever going to meet.
I was so impressed with him in real time back in November 2020. I had several conversations. We did the declaration. He was talking, in common sense, distilling it down for a layperson like myself. And mind you, at the same time, you and I were talking about it with great frequency. And obviously we had the input from Drew. But he was so spot on 2 years ago, more than, 25 months ago. He was absolutely spot on. And then Barry Weiss finds out or exposed that they were doing whatever, what did they call it, Gary? They shadow ban, but basically it was trying to limit, in a way, the reach that he had.
In Jay's case, he was tagged with. So one of the interesting things about this is seeing how on the back end Twitter, categorizes all of this. And for Jay specifically, he had a recent abuse strike and a trends blacklist, which means that nothing he was going to tweet was going to trend.
Right, and then the mouthpiece bloviating shill for the Biden administration will come up very recently and say, get your information from us, not some nut job on Twitter, right? So what they essentially did is they turned everyone who got shadow banned into some sort of conspiracy theorist nut job who was peddling dis and misinformation. And it was really the same tactics they did with the 51 Intel experts who signed the declaration that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Now they had something to point at. They'd go, oh, you think the Hunter Biden laptop is real? I got a piece of paper with 51 signatures on it. Or you think this guy should be heard? He's been banned from Twitter because he's too insane and he has too much disinformation. It's a scary game, but it's definitely a game that was being played. And then the next question is James Woods is going after these people. I imagine your Dan Bonginos would go after these people. You wonder if Jay Bhattacharya is going to go after these people. Like there's going to be round two. The round two is not just discovering what they did to try to destroy these people's careers. It's how can we assign a dollar amount to it and try to claw some of it back. And then the next part is who we suing now? Elon? Because Elon's the good guy.
What does it look like there? Speaking of that, we have a video clip, don't we, Gary?
Yes, we do. The current White House press secretary was asked a little bit about the Twitter files. So this is a more updated version of the gentleman you were talking about making his comments. So this is since the drop.
Real fast, Kareem, just real quick on Twitter, because you guys said you're keeping a close eye on Elon Musk's ownership, and it's the first time we've talked to you since you released the files a few days ago. Is it the White House view that decisions at Twitter were made appropriately in terms of decisions to censor this reporting ahead of the election?
You mischaracterized actually what I actually said and took it out of context when you asked her a question. Look, when I answered the question, and I actually already addressed this, about how the White House and the administration is seeing what's happening on Twitter. We follow also what's going on, just like you guys are reporting, just like you guys are seeing. And what I was commenting to is like, yes, we're seeing what is happening, just like you all are seeing what's happening with Twitter. So just want to clear that up because you definitely mischaracterized what I said or put it out of context. And so can you ask your question again?
Yes, my question was that you had said, I think 6 or so days ago, that the White House was watching closely the situation at Twitter after Elon Musk's ownership of it with respect to misinformation. And because these files were released on the basis of, hack materials clause at Twitter, decisions were made to censor reporting leading up to the election. My question was, is it the White House view that these decisions were made appropriately in light of what has come out?
Which decisions? By whom?
By Twitter.
By Twitter okay. So, look, we see this as an interesting or a coincidence, if I may, that he would so haphazardly, Twitter would so haphazardly push this distraction. That is a full of old news, if you think about it. And at the same time, Twitter is facing very real and very serious questions about the rising volume of anger, hate, and anti-Semitism on their platform.
Okay.
And how they're letting it happen. And, the president said last week, more leaders need to speak out and reject this. And it's very alarming and very dangerous. But our focus right now is helping the American families. I just talked about what the president is going to be doing in Arizona, talking about the Chips and Science Act, talking about how we're bringing manufacturing jobs back here to the U.S., talking about under this administration, more than 700,000 jobs have been created in manufacturing jobs, to be more specific. Look, what is happening, it's frankly, it's not healthy. It won't do anything to help a single American improve their lives. And so, look, this isn't. We see this as an interesting, coincidence, and it's a distraction.
Mark, what if you had that person on the stand? Wouldn't you just be licking your chops like, oh, boy, is this person dancing? Man, I've never seen someone dance around and lie so much in 2.5 minutes.
It's brilliant in a way. It's such deflection. It's brilliant rhetoric because you're characterizing something which is obviously not a coincidence as a coincidence. Nothing to see here. It's just
here's the tact. Here's the ploy. If I could give you something that was analogous, it was basically like your wife is accusing you of cheating for 2 years, and then at some point she looks at your phone and you've been saying the whole time, please, that never happened. You're insane. You're insane for accusing me of cheating. And then at some point she finds your phone and sees a bunch of texts from your guma and then goes, what about this? And you go, oh, that's old news. You brought this shit up 2 years ago. And it's like,
by the way, I got to make the mortgage payment this
right.
month.
Yeah. And what I'm trying to do is I'm looking for colleges for the kids. Let's not distract.
Why are you going backwards? Why are you looking backwards?
I'm going to Arizona State this weekend with Timmy. Oh, I'm pushing this family forward. I don't want to live in the past. And what they're saying is, well, that's old news. But what I'm saying is, yeah, but you were calling me nuts the entire time. That's why it's not old news.
I thought we were moving on. I thought we were looking forward.
Well, I got to tell you, we talked about it on the show, but when the narrative goes from I've never talked to my son about his business dealings ever to old news, moving forward, the American people are worried about their bottom line. Well, your story shifted now, and it suggests to me that I was probably correct in my allegations 2 years ago about you cheating. That's what I'm saying. So it went from this never happened to why do you want to litigate the past?
You know what? And my takeaway, obviously, through my prism is having used Jay and having fought this battle in real time, and now to find out that he was basically muzzled, if you will. It increases my frustration because we've talked so many times about this deference that the judicial system gave to the unelected health authorities by the basis of this rational basis, which basically is not a rational basis. It just says, as long as you give us lip service, we're going to let you do whatever you want to do, which is kind of a form of what you just said. It's don't bother me with this. We're working for the American public. So it's don't bother me with the scientific evidence or the harm that's going to be done or the fact that you've got no scientific basis for the things that we're talking about. And by the way, this expert that you have, he's an outlier. He's on the extreme, and he doesn't really know anything. We have the unelected bureaucrats making the decision who really know more than whatever. Now we know in retrospect just how faulty that was, just how dangerous that was, because livelihoods, there are 30,000 restaurant owners, most of them mom and pops. The percentage that were put out of business, their lifelong savings is astronomical. And the idea that somehow this was done purportedly with intent is really kind of it gets my gall and is exactly why the courts, in my opinion, should have gotten involved and done what they do best when the court asks tough questions.
Well, Jay Bhattacharya was basically part of the Great Barrington Declaration, and he was just saying, and they were just saying, shutting schools down, not a good idea, going to have long-term downstream consequences. You're hurting these kids. It's not scientifically prudent to do it. And shutting down society is a bad idea, too. It's going to cause a lot of depression and weight gain and suicides and drug overdoses and stuff. So that's what they were saying. They were being called heretics, essentially. And I want to know how much litigation is going to go on. Because presumably I could say, as a parent, you guys closed down the schools for a year and a half. It damaged my kids. They're now 2 years behind and going to have difficulty getting into college or blah, 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 or their livelihood or whatever. It was based on junk science. We'll find some smoking guns where you were saying, go after this person and shut that person up who disagrees with us. And then at what point is there class action lawsuits?
Well, the one of the hurdles is, and I know this from a case that we have in the office where we're just litigating this week, is they will argue that the platform itself, so here, whether it's Twitter or it's YouTube, that the platform under the appropriate section gives them immunity, that all they're doing is, providing a platform. But the tension is, if they're providing a platform and here they are actually curating it, that to me is when you get outside of the immunity. And now you've got proof that there's curation, and curation is, I guess, kind of a euphemistic term for we've got a viewpoint, we've got an agenda. And how do you get insulated from liability there? I think that's where the battle is going to be fought, in my humble opinion. As you said, whether it's class actions, whether it's somebody who's got damages, whether it's a school children, if your kids were held back or things of that nature, and you're going to be arguing immunities when there was a curation, for lack of a better term, of the information, and basically a silencing of voices. Well, that takes you out of just being a platform. And, people can talk about the hate speech, but at the same time, that's, the First Amendment, just because you don't like the speech doesn't mean that you get to silence the speech. That was why we had a revolution.
How's it going with Tin Horn Flats? Any updates?
Well, this week we've got the depots coming up, so it'll be interesting to see. I'll let you know after we do the depots on the big show next week.
You teased us a few weeks ago with some Paul Pelosi stuff, and we never really fleshed it out.
I couldn't close the circle on it. Unfortunately, I'm locked tight. Sometimes the problem is that somebody will contact me, and then I've got to be able to get to a point where I can reveal it, and I can't. I will say, however, yesterday, even though we announced it a week ago, the judge finally in Arizona approved, and the Laney and the girls in the Daniel Shaver case, which turns out, at least by my understanding, was the largest wrongful death settlement in Arizona civil rights history. That finally, after 6 years, just 1 month shy of the 7th anniversary of Daniel's killing, that's done. And I'll tell you, what a fight that was, and I can only hope that we talked about it before, but I only hope that the DOJ steps in now and says, okay, we're going to do something here, because I think, you were early money on that case in terms of the talking about just that it was, and I will tell you, I previously told the listeners, sitting in that criminal trial, and watching Laney watch the video and go into convulsions was one of the toughest experiences I've ever had as a lawyer. I mean, it was one of the most horrendous shootings that I've ever seen. And if you're at the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division, if there was ever a case that screamed for civil rights remedies, that would tend to be it, don't you think?
No, they're not interested. The guy's, he's white. That's it. That's the new world order. They just got Brittany Griner out of a Russian prison. She'd been in there for months. There's guys in there for years. They didn't get them out.
Well, I'm obviously vaping cartridges for hash oil is ridiculous, and the sentence was ridiculous.
No, it's all ridiculous. But what I'm saying is everything is seen through the eyes of some sort of progressive, woke, what's it doing for this group or that group now? Look, I'll give you a hypothetical in case you don't believe me, and you tell me what you think. I talked to the guy who runs Crypto Center, Staples Center,
Crypto.com Arena.
Crypto.com Arena. Name is Lee. I've spent some time with the guy, a colorful character. He told me, Lee Zeidman, I talked to him 5 years ago on a boat. And I said, what? I said, the last time I went to Staples, it was Staples at the time, I walked out, I tripped over a guy selling hot dogs right against the door, And by the way, they'll sell Modelo beers out there and tequila shots too. And he said, it's the bane of my existence. These guys are all over our property. They're literally up to the door. So when the concert ends or the game ends, everyone files out, and there's all these guys, no permits, no health codes, no inspectors, no nothing. And by the way, it's a kind of syndicate thing. They get dropped off in vans. Women, and they tell them to bring their young kids, but they load up the van in Chatsworth or something. Then they drive it down on a Friday night, whatever. He said, then he pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of a giant cockroach on one of the grills next to the hot dogs. And I said to him, can't you call the city council? Can't you talk to the DA? The mayor? What's up? And he basically said, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble. I said, these people are engaging in illegal activity nobody pays more taxes than the Staples Center in terms of downtown Los Angeles, with all the events and all the vendors and all the acts and all the tickets and all. I said, no. And so when I talked to him a few days ago, been 5 years later, I said, what's going on your property in terms of illegal vendors? He's like, it's worse. It's worse.
Oh, it's much worse.
And he said,
I walk down Fig all the time. I mean, it's unbelievable what happens here.
You walk down Figueroa, right? And so he said he's constantly talking to the city council. He's talking to the mayor. He talked to Gaston. Gascon, the DA, he said, no one's doing anything. No one will do a thing. So here's the hypothetical. All right. They won't enforce their own laws. Fine. You light a cigarette on the beach. Tell me how fast the government puts it out, or go crack a beer on the beach and see what happens. Or Elon Musk got the he's got the building inspector showing up to the Twitter headquarters in San Francisco because he built a room for people to take naps. Okay, that's an issue. That's an issue for them, and they will dispatch people to take care of it. But the guys doing all the vending illegally outside on the property of the Staples Center, that is a zero issue for them. So here's the hypothetical. And I figured it out years ago when I was talking about leaf blowers, which have been deemed illegal in Los Angeles. People don't know this because there's a leaf blower out front of every house every single day. It's illegal to operate a leaf blower in Los Angeles. But they found out quickly that the demographic of the guys who used the leaf blowers were poor Hispanics, and they didn't like the optics of coming down on poor Hispanics. So they're sort of picking and choosing what they enforce versus what they don't enforce based on sort of the demographic and their constituency. If you took all of those vendors that are set up every night in front of the Staples Center and changed their ethnicity from Hispanic to guys who look like Conan O'Brien, as blue-eyed guys with red hair, do you think the city council and the mayor and the DA would have a different take on what's going on there?
That's a very cynical view of yours.
It's 100% true. It could be there's no other view. By the way, it's grandfathered in. There's precedent. There's the leaf blowers. They're illegal. No one's ever gotten a ticket for working a leaf blower. Yes.
Well, all you got to do is, I'm sitting right now right above 7th Street. If you walk around the corner on 7th Street, there is a van that is there that is selling hot dogs. It is there every single day, day in, day out. And there are tickets on the windshield. In fact, my guess is there's probably 100 tickets on the windshield. And that van's there every single day. Doesn't matter. It's parked right out in front. In fact, he's kind of parked in front of the Coffee Bean, which is now out of business because that Coffee Bean presumably had a lease where they had to pay rent, and they probably had CAM charges, common area maintenance, and probably taxes and everything else. They couldn't withstand having the brick and mortar anchor, but the hot dog vendor, no problem.
Yes. So it is now a sort of two-tiered justice system, and you may not be comfortable answering my hypothetical, but I know what the answer is, and so does every Los Angelino. There's no way they'd let Whitey pull that shit off. So now...
You know what your predecessor hypothetical was? It was Barham Boulevard.
Right.
Right by Forest Lawn.
Yeah. It's the thoughts that popped into when this sort of two-tiered enforcement popped into my head was based on Forest Lawn writing tickets to the soccer moms on one side and turning a blind eye to the guys selling illegal flowers on the other side. That's when I realized, we have laws we enforce and then ones we don't enforce. Based some on ethnicity, a lot of it's on whether you have a checking account or not and can cut them a check. The guys on the other side of the street selling the flowers could not cut them checks. There were empty bags, as Mike August likes to say. But the soccer mom was fully insured and had a checking account, so they knew where they could get their money. And I'm just saying that is a slippery slope to go down as a society.
I'll give you another example. I used to call it, it's properly named Lebanon Alley behind the engine company, but I've now renamed it Fentanyl Alley. And you will see the frequent deaths. I was talking about this with Drew, where they just bring a tent over and they cover the body until somebody takes it away, and people shooting up in the alley and also smoking up, and no problem whatsoever. Mind you, this corner is one of the most presumably heavily patrolled areas you'll ever want because it's an MTA stop, right? You've got this morning when I went out to get a cup of coffee, I went by probably 15 bodies strewn on the sidewalk and on the bus stop in the bike lane, just strewn on the curb, and that's fine. Apparently, that's that we're helping those people by letting them just sprawl out on the sidewalk.
Well, I heard a very sobering guy on the radio yesterday, and he was talking about fentanyl, and it's a couple things, but this is a very interesting facet of this, which is, the fentanyl is insanely potent. There's pretty much no more heroin anymore. Fentanyl has replaced heroin in most big cities. The fentanyl is making it from, basically the border towns. It's getting down to Boston and it's getting very, very far east. I mean, it's spread out all over the place. But the thing that was very interesting that this guy was saying, and the speed, which used to be about 50% speed and 50% whatever they stepped on, it is now about 99% pure. And the speed and the fentanyl do something to your brain where self-preservation is crushed. So you're coming into the hospital with frostbite because you're sleeping outside and they're amputating your toes, meaning you're so fucked up on these drugs that has blocked the center of your brain that says, get up, get shelter, get out of the cold. Essentially the motivational part of your brain that says, I need to preserve myself. I need to take care of myself. It destroys that impulse. So now you have these people that are on these drugs and they don't have any self-preservation, and that then means you just die in the streets.
Well, according to Drew had predicted on your show that the coming wave of deaths is going to make what we've seen in the last 2 years look like child's play, because for that precise reason that this combination is so deadly, and you can see the evidence of it. I mean, at least I do anecdotally by walking the streets here downtown. You can see what's happening, and it's frightening for a variety of reasons.
All right, let me hit Geico, and then we'll switch gears to another case. Do you rent your home? Well, sure you do. It can be hard work. It's easy bundling your policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see just how much you could save and how easy it is to save at Geico. That is at geico.com. All right, Gary, we got one more.
One I want to talk about because I've defended this a number of times, and it's always kind of irked me. And it's a case where, I don't know, in the past, when I've defended whether it was Hertz or whether it was Avis or some other car rental agency, but it's always irked me how they are able to get authorities to file criminal charges when your credit card is either declined or you've overstayed the original rental. And I've always thought that was outrageous. It now has been reported that Hertz is going to pay $170 million to customers who say they were falsely accused of stealing cars. And the reason I also found this interesting is it fits in with your theory that will be the only thing that will cure these rental car companies from kind of co-opting the prosecutorial authorities in order to get people arrested because either the credit card limit. I had one where the credit card limit had been exceeded and there was a temporary kind of decline of the charges, which triggered an arrest for grand theft auto, which is just, to my mind, outrageous.
I'd never even heard about this before. But
Yeah.
when you say you mean a client?
Clients, yes. I've defended at least 5 cases that I can think of. I remember one in particular down in Long Beach, which it took practically an act of Congress to finally get the prosecutor to dismiss the case with this young kid who was arrested because the credit card had exceeded its limit, and somehow they morphed that into a grand theft. And I've always thought that was so outrageous. Whoever the lawyer was who filed the class action, hats off to you for the result, and I'll bet you that does something to stop that practice. The other case I was going to mention is the independent state legislature case that's before the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, we've been talking about this. I've been talking about this as it's climbed its way up the ladder to the Supreme Court, and we've been talking about it for years, and it's finally there. This is an interesting theory that is kind of percolated, that the Constitution says that, and it started Bush versus Gore, or as a result of Bush versus Gore, that it started to gain some traction, that state Supreme Courts cannot weigh in on the elections and the elector, if you will, but that the legislature has, the independent state legislatures of each state has basically the dominion and control over the process. Why is that important, or why does that matter? Because you've got, they're defrocking Rudy Giuliani, and there's been all kinds of pushback on the 2020 election. Well, if this theory gains credence and the SCOTUS adopts it, this independent state legislature, and who knows, because right now it looks like everybody who's trying to read the tea leaves views it as, and I've talked to you before about this particular court is kind of the 3-3-3, and it looks like there's 3 and 3 on each side. And right now it's going to come down to Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Roberts. Depending on which way they go or how those 3 split, that could really upend the presidential elections as we know it. So it'll be interesting. We'll keep you posted on that as it comes along.
Where do you come down? I think another one they're discussing in the Supreme Court is this whole it started with the masterpiece cake baker out of Denver who said, I won't bake a cake. I won't, bake a cake for a gay couple, but not a wedding cake for a gay couple because I'm Christian and it goes against my teachings. And now
it's a web designer.
Well, now it's a web designer.
Yeah.
It started with masterpiece cake baker that went to the Supreme Court of Colorado was. And this stuff drives me insane. But now there's a Christian web designer and she doesn't want to do certain people's designs. And my feeling is look, they have health clubs for women only. I don't give a fuck. I go across the street to the Brignoli's gym and use that place. And gay couple, you go across the street to the Vandy Camps and go get yourself a fucking cake. Stop suing everyone. But I don't know if the Supreme Court has settled this one or not.
They haven't yet. And my problem with this one is I think this is a hypothetical case. And I say hypothetical because it's not like this person has been faced with this yet. And so generally, I can cite probably 100 times I've been told by a judge I don't do hypotheticals. And this seems to me to be a hypothetical. And I would wait until there actually is a dispute. But they're going to weigh in. They have not as of yet, as long as I can, or as far as I can tell, right? Right, Gary? It has not been decided.
Not that I know of, no.
Where do you come down on like masterpiece cake baker?
Well, the libertarian in me says, just like I don't want to get into the bedroom, I don't want to get into the your business. As long as you are, I kind of take a live and let live. I don't understand somebody who would want the service of somebody who doesn't want to give them the service. I have trouble with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think for me, if it's your business, you're allowed to do what you want with your business. And then people would go, well, what if you didn't serve Jews or something like that? And I would say that is your business. It's going to hurt your business, and there'll be some sort of uprising, and your business will go out of business. But can you do that? Yes, you can. Number one, but to me, there are things, they're companies that are essentially monopolies. And so when Google or Apple or whoever says, I'm not going to let this app onto my services because I disagree with their politics, then at that point you have to go, well, you are a monopoly, and there is no going across the street to the other bakery and getting a cake. I would definitely factor in, if you said to me, there's one cake baker in all of Denver, and this is the way they feel, and so you shall not get yourself a gay wedding cake, then I will factor that in. If I find out that there's 13, a baker's dozen, of good bakeries in the Denver area, one as close as 4 blocks from the place you're trying to sue to get you to bake you a gay wedding cake, then I would say, well, why don't you just take your money down the street? And by the way, don't you want to support a business that is open-minded and open-hearted and will happily take your money, and you should be happy to give it to them? So to me, as long as there's alternatives, then that business is allowed to conduct themselves the way they want. Once it becomes a monopoly, that's tough. So when the DMV makes a declaration, it's a monopoly. Or, the city of Burbank, when they close down Tin Horn Flats, that's essentially a monopoly saying you can't do something or you have to do something. If there are many alternatives, then no, you should keep walking.
I can understand that. You've done kind of a little bit of a legal analysis there in terms of the monopolistic or antitrust analysis as well. Look at that. You're kind of a man for all seasons.
I like to say in my act that on occasion, they got sued by the gay couple, Masterpiece Cake. Masterpiece Cake baked me a cake when I played Golden, Colorado, by the way. It was delectable. But I like to joke that they were sued again. And this time they were sued because they wanted a cake for their son that was transitioning. And I said, what's that cake even look like? You know what I mean? Well, it started off life as a pie. And I would say if somebody forced me to bake them a transition cake, I would just slap a bagel down on the counter and go, there you go. And they'd go, that's not a cake. And I'd go, it identifies as a cake, bitch. All right, a funny note to go out on. Thank you very much. I'll be possibly doing that joke at the Rialto Theater and doing stand-up. That's in Tucson, Arizona, coming up on the 15th, December 15th. Then the 16th and 17th, Tempe, Arizona, at the Tempe Improv. Be doing stand-up there. We'll do some live pods there. And you can check out me and John Popper in Dallas, January 20th through the 22nd, and the Echo Theater. If you want to see us do shows that night, you can just buy a ticket to the theater. Go to amcurl.com for all the info. What do you got, Mark?
Well, if you're in downtown LA, stop by Engine Company 28 or around the corner at 10E for Mediterranean tapas. If you're in New York, go by GCT, Grand Central, and say hi to Jake at Dirty Taco, or say hi to the guys and the gals at the Prova Pizzeria.
So, till next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Hard Out, Soft Taco. Garagos, say it. Mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.